Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about a fairly nuanced and even controversial statement. And the direction I want to go with this, I've talked with you guys quite a bit about why, even if we do not account for velocity and the big classic lifts not being speed strength lifts, that's largely irrelevant to a lot of the merits of speed work or dynamic effort work. I've kind of pointed out frequently that we could actually set that argument completely to the side and still prove logically and anecdotally that speed work still makes you stronger, right? It makes you stronger through a combination of practice. It makes you stronger through hypertrophy, because it is phenomenal for both, right? First reps and hypertrophy. Very, very important for maximum strength, but something that we have to think about is the fact that the velocity really does matter. Okay, because the other is only a point that we would make to show other benefits and to completely diffuse the most common argument against it, that it actually would still work even if the primary premise of it isn't true. Does that make sense? It's diffusing the counter argument, saying, look, the secondary premise holds in its own very effectively, very provably. But when we talk about strength, how do we measure strength? We measure strength with a 1 rep max. Anyone who tells you we don't, and that there are other ways that we would test strength, right? There's all sorts of other tests, there's different types of strength, is actually a very ignorant person. They don't understand what the word strength means. They have no concept of exercise science. They have no concept of strength and conditioning. Okay? We test strength with a 1 rep max. We test it with a 1 rep max. Why? Because what is strength? Strength is the production of force against an external object. Period. That is what it means. And if you produce less force, you're going to have less ability to lift weight. Okay? If you produce more force, you're going to have more potential to lift weight. We find the limits by seeing what your 1 rep max is. That's what we find the limits of it. Now, does that mean with a weight 10% lighter you produce less force? No. No, it doesn't. We can produce the same force with 300 pounds that we can with 500 pounds. The problem is, without sophisticated equipment, you have no way to measure it for a testing purpose. Doesn't mean it can't be measured that way, and it doesn't mean it doesn't work that way. It does work that way, physics. We just have no way to test it. So therefore, a 1 rep max is the practical test of strength, because it's a production of force. And someone, again, will make that argument, well, what about your 10 rep max? It takes less force to move your 10 rep max than it does your 5 rep max. You sustain that force out for more time. But that's not what force is it? In other words, you exerting 500 pounds of force 37 times is still producing less force than 550 done one time. Okay, does that make sense? You produce 10% more force. If you produce 550 foot-pounds of energy with a movement, that is more force than doing 500, even if you did the 500 multiple times. Right? Basic physics here, guys. Hopefully that's clicking in for people to think about that. 550 foot-pounds of force is more energy than 500 foot-pounds of force, even if you did the 500 more than once. It shouldn't be difficult to grasp. It's a bigger number. It's more force. Force is physics. What is strength? Strength is the production of force against an external object. It's not the production of force against your tendon. It's against the external object. I'm talking about the structures inside your body. This is why leverages and stuff matter. This is why intramuscular coordination matters. Right? Muscle mass actually is pretty much a determination of how much force you can produce at a tendon for any given muscle. Right? Cross-sectional area of that muscle is going to be enormously, and probably the largest, if not like 99% of your force production. Your ability to produce force in your bicep at the tendon level is going to be based on how much cross-sectional muscle tissue you have in the bicep. Size equals strength in that regard. Does that mean that the biggest bicep always equals the best weighted chin up? No. No, because we've got levers involved, moment arms involved, leverages, all those leverages. We have other muscles involved besides the bicep, and we have intramuscular coordination. How well can you use your biceps, lats, rear delts? All of that together is one flowing unit. Not just what does your bicep do at the tendon. Understand the difference. But the chin up is a valid measure of strength, right? How much weight can you pull straight up? Right? How much weight can you pull up? Your body weight plus the weight added. That's a test of strength. Squat, bench, and deadlift aren't the only test of strength. A weighted chin up can be a very valid, legitimate test of strength. The standing press, an overhead press, a valid test of strength. The power clean. Ooh, the power clean, that's a good one. We come back over to that production force. You're not going to lift any significant weight slowly with that movement. Can't be done. So what is force? Why does the velocity and the time matter more? Remember we just talked about foot-pounds of energy? Anyone who doesn't know basic physics, step back. You all have heard the term E equals mc squared. That's how we measure energy. That's how we measure force. The velocity is squared. Okay. Any increase in velocity, which again we're dealing with the time component, has an exponential increase on the amount of force you produce. In other words, if you add 10% more weight and you move it at the same speed, the force required to do that, or the force exerted, is 10% increased. If you add 10% more velocity, we square that, you added 21% more force. Velocity is the larger component here. Velocity is a product of time. How far did we move it in how many fractions of a second? It's a time component. Come back over to that. Strength is measured in time, not pounds. Yeah, because that time component cannot be removed. If your max deadlift is 700 pounds, can you break it off the floor slowly and move it slowly and still lock it? Probably not. You might grind at certain points. But usually, when we blast past our sticking points, because we have power and speed, we can usually lift more weight though, can't we? Now, it's not saying people don't lift ultra heavy weights slowly because they're forced to. But how much cleaner does it go if they're faster? It's usually a lot better. A lot better. Also, what do we find? For a lot of people, if you can't move fast enough, you can't lift the weight at all. Still all about force production. Were you able to produce that force? Able to sustain that force? We're dealing with moment arms. We're dealing with joint angles. We're going to have weak links in a lift. If you can explode through because you have velocity through your weakest point in terms of your musculature, your joint angles, your leverages, what happens? You can usually lift the weight. You can lift a weight that you aren't capable of lifting had you hit that point slowly. The speed matters a lot. Is it necessarily everything? No, but it is an enormous component. It's an enormous component. And we can't deny that. And then we come down to the force production itself. Well, force production of force is what lets us lift a heavy ass weight. What's our formula? Mass times velocity squared equals energy. That's what force is. Can you accelerate it? The acceleration, it impacts what you can lift. Difference between grinding and exploding through a movement. Which one has more force involved? Like if you lift 700 pounds and you grind it versus if you just explode with 700 pounds. From a physics perspective, which one was a higher rate of force production? Which one was more force? Oh, the faster one. Well, that's what strength is. So when we say strength is measured in time, not pounds, not an entirely true statement, but it pushes us in the right direction. It takes us to a higher level of understanding. Alright guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.